Feel like we're in this new year together more than ever. I find it a privilege to have you as an audience. I just want to make sure you know that I can't pretend that everything's going to be all right and it's going to be a great new year because that's not true for everyone. I think what makes life meaningful is our consciousness about how privileged we are and our consciousness about how others might not be, how everything is not okay for everyone. I know we tell small children everything's going to be okay, but even they can see through us when it's not true. So, can we do about this? What can we do about the chaos, the confusion, the meanness, the sadness, the loss, the poverty? Perhaps we can't handle it all individually, but we can take care of it by addressing the needs of the corner in which we find ourselves, our consciousness about our neighbors, asking a friend if they need help, seeing what's around us and doing the best we can to make it better. That's useful activity. And one of the things I like to do is have deep and meaningful conversations about those things that sometimes people don't really want to talk about. But it isn't just the questioning that I engage in, it is, in fact, the listening. I find myself very fortunate that I've had the privilege for years and years and years of listening to amazing people. Not everyone is the same, not all conversations are as deep as others, but the few times I've had the privilege, it's helped enrich my life. So I want to share it with you. Um, what makes a good interview in my mind is not so much the deep, penetrating question or the chance to look smart, but rather the opportunity to listen to something that you might not have heard before, to find a morsel of truth that had been obscured, to see someone who has something to say that may never have had a forum to say it before. I'm really fascinated by interviewing people who have really been invisible to us. Um, sure, there are some famous people who I've had the privilege of being with, and some of them are wonderful. But the really interesting interviews have been with people that no one's ever really heard. Like years and years ago, I got to talk to Mrs. Woody Guthrie. Now, when you're in an old fashioned television studio and you used to have real people standing behind the cameras, and you could always tell whether or not the show was interesting because no matter who it was, if it wasn't really exciting for the camera people, they wouldn't really be paying attention. You'd look out on the floor and they'd be, not really glued. They'd look at listening to the technical uh, instructions, but they would not really be there. But anyway, when Mrs. Woody Guthrie started to talk in a very calm and quiet manner, she was dressed very simply, very humbly. Suddenly, I noticed the camera people all stood at attention, paying attention to her. And this intrigued me. This inspired me. Now she was talking about Woody Guthrie, what an extraordinary man he was, and what a great songwriter. This land is your land, this land is my land. But her manner was special. Her manner was sincere. Her being was authentic as she talked about the challenges of health that her family suffered and the challenge of losing Woody Guthrie. So that started me on a journey to find those people that had something to say that we don't hear all the time. I mean, sure, I like celebrities like the next person, but they have a forum. What about the number two person on the Nobel Prize, the one who didn't get it, but who had great ideas? This has become a life mission for me. So What I'm going to share with you are just a few clips of shows that I've done in recent years that have changed my mind about the world we live in, or who've opened me to new thinking, or who've shared something deeply personal. There isn't any particular order in these interviews. Some you may have seen, some you may not have. And I'm just going to play clips from those interviews and wish you a meaningful and fulfilling new year with your eyes wide open and your heart open.
You are watching Profonde TV with host Phyllis Haynes.
We know through processes of adaptive intelligence that robots will learn to be more human every minute. But how will we thrive as humans in this extraordinary shift in AI capabilities? There are increasing predictions about the coming of the time when technological advancement will surpass the capabilities of humankind. Some refer to this as the singularity, a term derived from Albert Einstein, who first used it as a way to describe the theoretical characteristics of a black hole, where the gravity is infinite and where nothing can escape, not even light. For now, the singularity is increasingly used to warn us about the point at which artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. The famous British physicist Stephen Hawking, passed away in 2018, warned success in creating AI would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last, unless we learn how to avoid the risks. Bill Gates writes, "It is already here." This is from his blog, March 21st, 2023. Then there's the possibility that AIs will run out of control. Could a machine decide that humans are a threat, conclude that its interests are different from ours, or simply stop caring about us? Possibly, but this problem is no more urgent today than it was before the AI developments of the past few months. So, what does this mean for humans? How do we thrive during this enormous transition?
Because we are in the midst of so much change. Now, we could have said that about many different times and spaces where change is the constant. But I think we might agree that given the emergence of the new tools of artificial intelligence and large language models, the impact that it's having on the world is calling on leaders to really not just step up, but to cope with a new world, a new way of perceiving and operating in the world. And though sometimes we think, oh, they're a set of tools, it's creating a structural change in the world. And that, along with when you couple it with COVID, for example, to keep it in real life, we've changed the way that we've had to engage with one another. And so this has really been, I think, a positive change where we've become a little bit more comfortable with connecting across borders and across time zones and across cultures. And it opened up this window for us to have different types of conversations. But what does that mean to us as leaders? It means that we have to engage rather differently. And I'm not just talking about the tools, I'm talking about how do we connect meaningfully with one another across the platforms and across geographic zones. But how do we talk to each other now that we have tools that wind up talking for us and perhaps even better than we might ourselves when we think about the applications of artificial intelligence? And so I think your question is pretty important for us to be asking at this juncture. What is the responsibility for leaders today? Can we go from analog to digital to large language models? Or do we as humans have to actually fundamentally change?
I want to quote something here that one of the other reviewers said because I think it represents the average point of view about AI. It said, have you ever worried that your coffee maker could develop a mind of its own and decide to conquer the world? I think people, by and large, are so concerned about AI because it's one of those things, if you don't know something, then you're even more concerned because you're in the dark.
If you're not familiar with it, your natural tendency is to become afraid of it.
That's
And that was true even in the 1950s when all these science fiction movies with robots taking over the world. That's a natural reaction.
right. And Hollywood did a great job of instilling even more fear in people. That was wonderful. Thank
Fanning
you.
the flames. Yeah, that's what they're good at.
So from your perspective, and I appreciate the fact that you can break things down fairly easily, talk about how AI has progressed just in the world of cameras. Let's just look at something that people can relate to, a camera.
I can go back even earlier than that because back in my NASA days, AI was such a buzzword, even back in the 1960s. And a lot of research has gone into it, and the field went absolutely nowhere until about 18 months ago. Then all of a sudden, machine learning hit the surface. And I call it machine learning. I don't like to use the word AI because there's absolutely nothing intelligent about it. You got machine learning, and it's doing pattern matching. And when you use these text interactive things, they will guess what the next word is, but there's no consciousness there. You're not actually talking to a person. As
Right.
far as photography goes, a new branch of AI, some people may know it as Midjourney, some people may know it as Stable Diffusion. What you do is you type in some words about the image you have in your mind, and it comes up with a beautiful illustration. And you can even say, make it look like a Rembrandt painting or make it look photorealistic. And it's really impressive. In the early days, there were problems, like people would have 7 fingers on a hand, or an appendage would be coming out of someone's ear, things like that. Those problems are going away, and the technology is improving quite a bit. But photographers in general, and graphic artists in particular, are really worried about job security because they're now too expensive compared to an art director who can just type in a few things and have a graphic output that's good enough. The people who are worried about AI taking over are all worried about the wrong thing. It has already ruined people's lives in a negative way. It has been denying medical benefits to Medicare patients. It's been denying university admissions. It's been denying bank loans. All sorts of things that used to be decided by humans are now decided by an algorithm, and there's no way you can fight back against it.
For example, Linus Pauling, who, I mean, definitely discovering the therapeutic benefits of, the necessity of vitamin C to human diet, but also the therapeutic benefits of taking vitamin C in its pure form as ascorbic acid. I mean, that definitely upgraded the game for everybody. You could argue that Steve Jobs, with all of the innovations he created, upgraded the game for everybody in terms of global connectivity of knowledge. However, I don't know, there are artists who put pigs in formaldehyde and display them, and that's kind of art. But it's maybe a little more difficult to see how that really upgrades the quality of life for everybody. I'm not saying it doesn't, I'm just saying it's a little bit more of a stretch. So we need a little bit of a distinction between, because art can be very expressive of darkness. Art can be very expressive of rage. Art can be a way of giving expression to collective feelings, but it's not necessarily part of the evolutionary movement of us all moving from kind of base animal aspect of our natures into the more, the highest possibilities of human potential.
I have a principle that I include in everything that I do in my work, which is use of time through use of ability. And it seems to me that the really important thing is to have methodology, to find out what an individual's abilities are. And in using those abilities, in other words, I'm agreeing with you, I simply turn it inside and say, if you have capabilities to be a scientist, and whatever that actually entails, enabling you to be that scientist is going to be the fulfillment of your purpose, your being, and the application of that ability to whatever subject matter you choose is going to be the benefit to all of us each and every time. And I think that's probably true in the way that we do our work and live our lives.
So psychology is not enough to get us there. Psychology, I think, is this, it allows us to investigate the clutter that stands in the way from between where we are now and where it is we want to get. It is an investigation really of our history, of how we're socially and culturally conditioned by the family, conditioned by our surroundings, our values, our entertainments, our religions, our local society. Once we have an intimacy with the social conditioning, with the psychology, then there's the vast expanse of spiritual awareness that is not about the past. Psychology is about the past.
That's right. And in fact, in a way, the issue here is one of causality.
Yes.
That in a past determined view of the world.
Which is the present is the result of the past.
That's right.
Which is a limited paradigm, and we've exhausted it.
Well, and in that paradigm, you're also taking your experience in the past and
throwing it into the future.
Projecting it into the future.
Yeah.
Calling that the future, but making your decisions on that means you're really living into more of the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is how we get trapped in these.
Sometimes we move the furniture around, and so we can fool ourselves for a lifetime or lifetimes. We can blind ourselves to what is really going on. It's like moving around the inside of a torus, round and round, and this way and this way, and it looks like you're actually going somewhere.
Exactly.
So,
but in this theme, the theme of these talks really has to do with possible futures. So if the traditional view of the future is an extension of the past, then I'm proposing that we really need to invent a different mindset, a different way of thinking, in which we can disconnect the future as a possibility from an extension of the past. And where your work on creativity has been so exciting is to really see that human beings can begin to see the future as a choice.
It is a choice.
And if we look at
clearly a choice.
If we look at the future as a choice, then the question is really not what's possible, but what future are we committed to creating?
You know, I'll see if I can conjure up a metaphor for this. We were talking about surfing before we rolled cameras. The waves break and they roll to the beach. Now, how you show up on that wave, the quality and level of your performance on that wave, that is a matter of that is a skill set that has to do with the doing nature of things. Mm-hmm. The being nature, the mood state, lies in forces beyond you. Mm-hmm. Now, we can create relationship with those, and it's my view that what is emerging is a brand new skill set, a conscious skill set that involves making a conscious relationship with mood.
I believe that's exactly right, and I think I love the surfing metaphor. In fact, I've been using one similar to that
What's
myself.
yours?
Well, I've been using navigating,
Yeah.
but surfing I think is even better, because if we think about the future as something that's emerging,
Yeah.
in the same sense that a wave emerges, then we have to surf.
And it's literally so.
It's literally
It's
so.
actually
And
literally a wave
we
front.
need to be able to surf that emerging reality
Yeah.
in order to be able to have possibilities and deal with our human concerns. But also I'm beginning to appreciate something that's I've been working on for the last few months, that's the flip side of that, which is to appreciate that the waves are also disappearing
Yes.
as fast as they're emerging,
Yes.
so that we're not only dealing with an emerging reality
Yes.
and emerging possible futures, but we're also dealing with worlds that are disappearing.
Absolutely.
And I was reading a book called Radical Hope
Yeah.
by Jonathan Lear, who talks about the metaphor of the, not a metaphor, it's an analogy of the Native Americans, whose entire civilization revolved around the buffalo. And their spiritual world, their physical world, their economic world, everything was centered around the buffalo. And when the buffaloes disappeared, their whole world disappeared. It wasn't just change. And I'm starting to
It's a paradigm shift. It's a dimensional shift, really.
Exactly. And I'm beginning to appreciate my own world. If I think about my education, the values, the relationships that I grew to understand, the meaning that I built in my life, all of that is under reformulation as this world I've grown up in is disappearing. Equally important, I think, though, is also how we share these ideas and share these observations, so that it's not just you and me individually maybe having some skill at surfing, but that we were able to create a civilization capable of surfing.
How fascinating the ways hope can flourish or fizzle in an instant or a breath. One moment all is well, and clear as a bell messages are inspiring my trajectory toward possibility and, dare I say, joy. And then things somehow unravel or frazzle in the blink of an eye, leaving me untethered as I weather countless unanticipated storms with no guiding norms to illuminate a course, or elucidate a plan, or endorse a source forward toward peace and ease, and, dare I say, unbridled joy. Why do moments of seamless flow and thriving suddenly and unceremoniously devolve from wonderfulness to watchful warnings, from stability to volatility, from feeling anchored and secure to feeling randomly tossed about by the vicissitudes of life? Perhaps in the end, as the road twists and bends, there awaits the simple awareness that being humbly present to the all of it is exactly what this experience we call life is ultimately all about. And what is ours to do is to not doubt the process, but rather be open and curious and courageous and prayerfully responsive, come what may. Who's to say what joyous lessons might be blessing our way as we willingly, or at least unflinchingly, stay the course?
A house divided against itself cannot stand. Those are the words of Abraham Lincoln. The simple reason we became the United States is that we were more powerful against any enemy together. States' rights and state sovereignty are important, and yet they do little to help overcome the dangers of an invasion, an attack on our shores, or a pandemic. If we had entered World War II state by state, telling states to defend themselves, our national languages would be German and Japanese. The framework of the federal government helps us operate as a more powerful union. The problems that face us as a nation are increasingly global, facing the challenges of climate change, water resources, land use, immigration, literacy, technological literacy, health, population growth all require a national and sometimes a global response. We cannot indulge in thinking that we are separate. The problems of those people over there are signs of problems that will come to our shores. Even if you stop all international travel and trade, which is impossible, the air we breathe cannot be contained. We breathe air that comes from around the globe. Pollution of our seas affects the fish we all consume. So our thinking must expand beyond the border of a single state or a single country. The World Health Organization reports that nearly 7 million people are killed each year around the world due to air pollution. Are we so naive that we think air sits in one place and stays there? We are dependent on global stability, and a first step in global stability is our national stability. We cannot fight each other over resources, human rights, racial justice. It is old thinking that some will rise while others fall. We are all in the same boat. Remember the Titanic? When it comes to the problems we now face, we are all in steerage. We hope you'll join us for more right here on CNJN.